Speedy here.
Guzikowski here.
Seifert here.
Chandler here.
So we have Commissioners Corral and Dickman are excused. Am I missing anybody else? I don't think so. All right, item 2 is minutes of the January 10th, 2017 meeting.
Seifert moves to approve the minutes of January 10th, 2017.
Chandler second.
Roll call.
Johnston, aye.
Grillo, aye.
Davich, aye.
I think it was at that meeting. Speedy, aye.
Guzikowski, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
All right, item 3 is significant common council actions. Carrie.
Council approved the following: an ordinance approving a conditional use permit for a freight terminal with 2 20,000-gallon underground fuel tanks and outdoor dolly storage for the property at 500 West Opus Drive, and directed the Plan Commission to prepare and review appropriate conditions and restrictions for review by the council at the March 7th meeting. Also, a resolution designating the public right-of-way adjacent to the property at 2200 West Drexel Avenue as South IKEA Way. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Carrie. We're going to move on to item 4A. It's a sign appeal hearing. The hearing is for a proposed sign appeal for the property at 7979 South Main Street. Tenant address is 410 West Town Square Way. It's submitted by John Kunmensch. Thank you, sir. Bel-Air Cantina that would allow 4 21-inch by 28-inch vinyl window decals, 3 neon window signs, and opaque with images vinyl coverings on the northeast glazing of the building for the Bel-Air Cantina tenant space. Tax key number is 813-9053. Pete will now read the public hearing notice into the record.
Thank you. City of Oak Creek noticed a public hearing before the Plan Commission. Public hearing for a sign appeal will be held Tuesday, January 24th, 2017 at 6 p.m. Oak Creek City Hall, Common Council Chambers, 8040 South 6th Street, Oak Creek, Wisconsin, 53154. Appellant John Kunmensch, the Bel-Air Cantina. Tax key number 813-9053-000. Property is located at 7979 South Main Street. To request a variance from section 17.0334, part of the General Development Plan and Regulating Plan, which states that eye-level signs that include text graphics patterns may not cause more than 10% of the glazing to become opaque. Furthermore, 1 eye-level sign is permitted per 12 linear feet on an entry facade. If granted, the variance would allow the applicant to install 4 21-inch by 28-inch vinyl window decals, 3 neon window signs, and opaque with images vinyl coverings on the northeast glazing of the tenant space located at 410 West Town Square Way. Zoning of the property is DTS MUPDD, Drexel Town Square Mixed Use Development District. All interested persons wishing to be heard are invited to be present. Dated this 5th day of January 2017. Plan Commission, City of Oak Creek, Wisconsin. Mayor Steve Scafidi, Chairman.
I'll make 3 calls for public comment on item 4A. First call. Second call. Third and final call for public comment on the sign appeal hearing, item 4A. Seeing no one coming forward, I'll close the public hearing. We'll move on to 5A under new business. It's a sign appeal request for the property at 7979 South Main Street, tenant address 410 West Town Square Way. Submitted by John Kunmensch. God, I keep screwing that up. Bel-Air Cantina that would allow 4 21 by 28-inch vinyl window decals, 3 neon window signs, and opaque with images vinyl coverings on the northeast glazing of the building for the Bel-Air Cantina tenant space. Tax key number 813-9053-000. Just before you start, Pete, I'm assuming that this is a byproduct or result of the action we took a meeting or 2 ago, where all of these things will now come to the Plan Commission for review.
Yes, there'll be other tenant spaces that will also be coming before you, looking probably for sign appeals as well. And similar to the previous one with vinyl covering, and that's why as item 5B, we'll be taking that up separately, and I'll explain that further in my report for the sign appeal.
Okay. I'll open it up to the commission for questions. Commissioner Seifert.
Yeah, I'd like to ask the owner if you'd step forward to the mic.
I'm just a representative. I'm
Okay,
the project manager.
representative.
If you
the
could,
restaurant
for
group.
the record, sir, name and address.
John Kunmensch, do you want my home address or?
Business address is fine.
Business address would probably be the address here for 410 West Town Square Way.
Okay.
How many signs do you really need to advertise the business?
Well, if you see all the glazing that we have on this building, I mean, it's pretty vast. And what we're trying to do, I mean, originally with those vinyl, the Bel-Air Oak Creek with the website, we basically put that on while we were building doing the build up because we had vendors and people who were coming by couldn't find us. And of course, at the time, there was just a lot of things going on. After the fact, then we kind of really liked them being up there, and we're asking for your forgiveness that we haven't taken them down yet. Obviously, the exit-only signs on the doors are kind of needed because we have a main entrance door, but people continuously come into the side doors, and we need those open for egress while we're operational. And we'd rather not have people come in there, especially in the wintertime when it's cold. We have to keep them unlocked so people can exit the building. So it just kind of guides them to the front door.
I think it's a little overkill myself.
Well, it's in keeping with our concept. So I appreciate that, though.
Commissioner Chandler?
So Pete, quick question. Some of the signs are compliant and then some are not. Which ones are compliant?
Sure. To give a little explanation of the number of signs. When Bel-Air came to the Plan Commission for their sign plan review, with their wall sign, staff worked with the applicant to determine that the south elevation, which faces the town square, and the southwest elevation, which is their front door, are entry facades. Okay? And so when looking at their eye-level sign package, we looked at the south elevation. It's approximately 91 feet. So you do that calculation of one sign per every 12 linear feet, they would be allowed up to 7 signs. Now, a little bit different than from what we had in the public hearing notice. If you look at the Bel-Air location, if it's going to pop up, there is the Bull, which is a sign, and then they have their web address as a separate sign. So when you count up the use other door sign, because that is a sign, it's content, it tells you where to go. There's 2 of those. There's the 2 of the bull symbols. There's 2 of the internet address, and then there's an hour of operation, which is to the left of one of the bulls. I don't think it shows up very well, but it's in a darker font, if you notice on the south elevation. So staff call those as all 7 signs. They meet the 10% coverage rule, so no variance would be required for those signs that are currently facing the south elevation. Now, keep in mind, I went out there today, and on one of the doors, to the right of the bull on your screen, there was, I think, advertising ice cream. I think there's something there. That was not applied for. They know that would be the 8th sign, which would not be allowed. So what's being approved tonight are the seven signs. And so there, as I said before, it doesn't require any sort of variance for those. Now, on the southwest corner, there is the neon signs. Bring that up. There's the mezcal. I think there's a better picture. Tequila, tacos, Bel-Air, and then below the Bel-Air, there's actually the web address again. So that's how I came up with the 5 signs. That entry facade only has 24 feet of frontage. So technically, by code, there should only be 2 signs displayed there. As for the neon signs, in the Drexel Town Square regulating plan, it specifically calls out neon is not to be used as a primary use for signage. Now, this isn't primary, this is secondary, this is the eye-level sign. The Plan Commission does have the discretion to determine whether or not that neon is a proper, sign for this district. And it'll be up to your discretion whether or not to allow those types of signs. In their narrative that they submitted with the application, they indicated that those signs would only be on during in business hours. So far to this date, they've been on 24/7. I come for, unless they're open at 8 a.m. in the morning.
We have cleaners there at about 5 o'clock in the morning.
So
when they turn the lights on, we can easily put those on a timer if need be.
and I think that would be something for the commission to discuss. I don't know if you've seen the neon signs at night, but they are quite bright. Also on the northwest corner, which is underneath the pergola, there are the bull and a use other door sign. South elevation, southwest.
There's one lower.
Well, they do have the bull, and also they use other directions. So they have 3 signs. The issue with that corner, that northwest corner, is it's not an entry facade. It's strictly for the guests to come through, or the servers to come through. It would require a variance to allow those 3 signs to be on that elevation. Those signs do meet the 10% rule, so there's no variance required for the opaqueness, but for the number. And then the last side is the north side, which is the complete opaque covering on the north end. North end is not an entry level, so a variance would be required to allow any eye level signage there. And this also exceeds the 10% opacity rule for this. Now, with that said, similar to how we handled the GG cupcakes, we worked with the city attorney and said, all right, this is really not a sign as much as trying to hide back of house operations. And that should be taken up as a separate review through site plan as a modification to the amount of clear glazing allowed on the tenant space. So with that said, the applicant will have a total of 5 signs on the entry level side on the southwest, 3 on a non-entry side, and those would require a variance. So if the Plan Commission is comfortable with the number of proposed signs, the Plan Commission can approve granting a variance allowing the tenant at 410 West Town Square Way to display 5 eye-level signs on the southwest elevation, 3 signs, and not to cover more than 10% of the clear glazing on the northwest elevation, as shown in Exhibit A. And I would like to add the condition that the neon signs would, if granted, would be turned off or only be on during business hours.
Did that answer your questions? This side, anything? Alderman Bekavich?
Let me get this straight, Pete. Variance for the 5 signs on the southwest. You know why? Because I'm not speaking into it. Just so I'm understanding this, 5 on the southwest side,
Correct.
3 on the northwest side, and then the opaque on the north side.
We would not approve the north side one. We'd set that as a separate item under the site plan review, similar to what we do with Gigi's Cupcakes.
Okay.
So a variance would not be granted for the north elevation.
We're leaving that alone
That you would,
on A.
on A. As for the sign appeal, what you would be granting is as part of the last paragraph of the report, that you would be granting a variance allowing the tenant to have 5 eye-level signs on the southwest elevation and 3 signs on the southwest. Let me get 5 eye-level signs on the southwest elevation and 3 signs, not to cover more than 10% of the clear glazing on the northwest elevation, as shown in Exhibit A, with the condition that the neon signs are turned off, are only on or only turned off during business hours.
Okay, and the south side is okay.
South side is fine.
Okay. So I guess I'd like to just discuss them one at a time, and, the rest of the commission can jump in, but maybe it'll put some semblance of order to it, at least in my head. And I guess I'd take the 3 signs on the northwest side first. And we are specifically talking about the bull. Oh, that's the west.
Up on your screen is 4 of the 5 signs. It's
Okay.
Each of the neon signs are a separate one. Because if you count it all as one, then that causes problem with the 10% rule.
I mean, to Pete's point, he's essentially saying to the commission, if you would be comfortable with allowing them to shut them down at night and allow them to be there during the day, I guess that's what he's saying.
And you know what?
Or at night, rather.
I don't have a problem with that at all. I think the neon is far more attractive than the debate we had over the LEDs that border and the whole deal. Again, I look at them as, I don't view them as signs as much as I view them as decorative atmosphere. No different than if you go into one of these places that has all the stuff hanging from the rafters or whatever. That's my personal point of view. So given that, as long as they're appropriately timed, I would be okay with the neon. But then again, I like the neon. I think it's a kind of a throwback thing. I think it's nice if it's done appropriately. So again, I'm okay with the timing on that one regarding the northwest side. So I'll stop there until we go to the other one.
Pete, if they would have put the website on the actual bull, that would have been just one sign then, right?
Right. I mean, it's two separate, because otherwise I have to go the whole rectangle
Yeah.
around the whole thing, and then they get penalized for all that extra dead space. So I kept it as separate signs. That way, you just would have to concern with the number and not deal with the percentage. It's kind of a way to work around the 10% rule.
And this is just my opinion, but I've been there about a dozen times. I've never even noticed. I've seen the bull once, I think. I've never noticed it since. I like the neon. The website thing, I think, is, I don't know why you need that. Put that on the rest of the signage, and you could accomplish the same thing. It doesn't need to be separate, but I understand that's already done. I don't really have an objection to this, and I do think that neon should be shut down when you're not in operation. Other comments?
I have a question.
Yes, go ahead,
about-
Mr. Chandler.
About the neon sign. So I know it's per our planning procedure, no neon signs in this area. Is there a reason behind the no neon?
In the regulating plan, they identified different styles of signage that would not be encouraged or would actually be prohibited as a certain type of sign. And in this particular case, it doesn't apply because it's not the primary. So say they had the Bel-Air Cantina wall sign with neon, that we would have made a recommendation not to approve. Now, this is an eye-level sign, and so the Plan Commission has a discretion within the zoning to determine whether or not that is an appropriate type of sign, eye-level sign. And so that's why we bring that to the commission's attention, because it's a little bit different than the bulls. The bulls aren't illuminated, they're not, but that one is illuminated at night. And you do have residents across the street that probably would appreciate not having a neon sign blazing in their front windows.
Thank you.
What are the hours of operations?
11 till midnight.
11 till midnight, and the need to have the neon would obviously be till midnight. But what would be the latest you'd want to turn those on at
We could open, we turn them on at 11.
11?
Yeah. You turn them on, then people know we're open.
Commissioner Carrillo?
My concern is that we get a tenant that wants to do something like this, and it doesn't have, the tequila tacos. I mean, that's kind of fun, but it's the dental place, and it says, cavities, fillings, and cleaning. I'm just afraid if we open it up to this, that it's going to maybe apply to other of our tenants.
I think your point's well taken. I think we have to look at it as a case-by-case basis. We had the dental clinic in here, and it's not on the agenda, so I don't really want to discuss it on the opaque window. Hindsight's 50-50 when you do something like this. So, again, I kind of agree with the mayor. I don't really know if you need the website on there. I've never noticed it before tonight. I've been there a few times myself. Again, I don't know if it's so much precedent setting, because again, a variance is a one-time request per business, so you're going to look at it any individual way. So again, without the website, we're down to the 3 signs then, correct? If he doesn't put the website part sign on,
Then you would have a total of 4 signs on that southwest entrance, and only 2 is permitted by the formula of 1 for every 12 linear feet. So a variance would still need, even if you didn't grant a variance for the internet address sign, there's still a variance to allow for entry level or eye level signs. And again, if he chose to scrape off the bull and leave the internet, we don't get to tell him what ones go. We only get to tell him he can have 0 or 1 or 2 or 3 or 4. So even though you may feel that the internet one is the least value, that is not, unfortunate. That's not the call of the Plan Commission. No, the Plan Commission can comment on the number, grant a variance on the number.
Thank you for clearing that up, Pete.
Other comments or questions? As I said, I don't have an objection. I've never looked at that and saw it as a overuse of signage. I actually like the neon, and I think the power of the commission is to look at these things individually, as Alderman Bakavich just said, and if we think it's appropriate, we move it forward. If we don't, we make a suggestion to the client that you got to do something about it, or the tenant rather. So, Alderman Johnson, I'm promoting you. Commissioner Johnston.
I'm just going to disagree. I'm not a fan of the neon signs. I don't think they need to be there. I'm okay with the bowls and the signs on the windows. Those blend in. It's not obtrusive, I don't think, for those signs. But the neon signs, I just think, stand out, and I don't think that's the look. That's definitely not the intent that they were going for when we drafted the language for the signs. And I don't think it's what we want to have out here.
If they did something else with those neons that wasn't on the window, would that be allowed?
Like they moved it interior to the restaurant, that would be permitted, yes.
Just curious. Other questions or comments? Motion on 5A.
Before we do the motion, did we talk about the southwest side?
You guys were, I think southwest is what you were talking about. I think it was the northwest that you haven't addressed yet, which is the door sign
northwest
and the
is
ball.
3.
The northwest is the 3, which is underneath the pergola, which is it's the bull, the address, and then use other door sign.
Which I do think is an important sign to have on there. Is there 2 of those?
There's one on the south side and one on the northwest side.
Well, it's a directional sign. I really don't have an issue with that. It's like having a pull sign on a door or a push sign on a door. I mean, do we count that actually? Just out of curiosity?
In and out,
Well, yeah.
push, pull.
Yeah, if you put that on the door, is it a sign?
Anything that is content and attracts attention to a service, product, or business, yeah. Technically, we haven't done that because usually they're very small. They're very obscure. You're not really seeing it. But as these are larger signs. And again, this northwest elevation, you would be granting a variance allowing eye-level signs on a non-entry facade. And if they want to choose to make it exit only, they want it to bull, they want it to internet, they want it to be instead of those 3 like they're illustrated here, they could have 3 tacos. That's once again, just kind of beating that drum about content. This is what they're looking to do. However, it doesn't stop them from doing anything different. Or if another restaurant were to go there, they would give them the ability to put 3 signs up not to exceed 10% of the glazing. And that's what we're looking at here, is whether or not a non-entry facade should be allowed to have eye-level signs.
Just so we're clear, this is not what they're looking to do. This is what they've done.
This is what they have done, correct. But just the idea that in the concept when the variance is being granted, we're not granting these exact signs. We may be giving the dimensions, potentially saying, all right, 28 inches by 41 inches, but we're not, if they meet the 10% rule, they can make it whatever they want it to be.
Thank you.
If we were to just go with these signs and let's say, in the future that we wanted to change them, could we stipulate that, these can't be changed with us coming to you first to get approval for something like that? So we don't put tacos.
Well, we can't stop content, correct?
No, we can't, because what will happen is we'll grant you a variance to be able to put up 3 eye-level signs on that elevation, as long as it doesn't exceed 3,
Right.
and it doesn't exceed 10% of the glazing. You don't have to come for permission from the Plan Commission. We can't regulate.
And we have, to be honest, we could pull those website ones down. We could go for 2 on that side. That's not an issue. Those websites we just kind of included as 1. And that you're counting them as 2. It's not a big deal. Everyone knows what our website is now. It was pretty much up there before, just for the fact so people would know where to look to see what our other restaurants were like.
We can't control the interior signage, correct?
No.
They could put it all over the
Right.
interior if they wanted to.
Right, they want to put it on a wall inside the business, that's their prerogative, yes.
You're looking for a motion that actually sets the number?
We have the number on, the southwest elevation. I would like to have approval that, if their neon signs are going to be allowed, that there be a condition that the neon signs are turned off during business hours or are on only between the hours of 11 a.m. and 12 a.m., how you want to phrase it, and that there would be 3 signs not to cover more than 10% of the clear glazing on the northwest elevation, as shown in your packet as Exhibit A. So that is what we would be granting a variance for, is for the number, the fact that it's on a non-entry facade are the two variances that are being granted. So the way I phrased it in the last paragraph of your report would be essentially giving them the variances for what they already have existing on their tenant space.
Right, so it's the last page, if you want to state it as such.
I have just a quick question. So it's one whole package, so we can't just say without the neon.
You have the discretion to say that, the neon can't be is not a permitted type of sign. What it would be is, you can give the number and then say not to include neon signs. So they could have 5 signs on the southwest, just not to be neon.
Just to be clear again, the person that makes the motion will decide what the motion says.
Correct.
Unless we're going to have competing motions.
Are we looking for a motion?
Yes.
All right, Kavich will make a motion that the Plan Commission grant the variance allowing the tenant at 410 West Town Square Way to display 5 eye-level signs on the southwest elevation and 3 signs not to cover more than 10% of the clear glazing on the northwest elevation shown in Exhibit A. And we'd also like to include that if neon lights are included within the 5 eye-level signs, that they are timed on and off only when the business is in operation, preferably 11 a.m. to 12 a.m.
Motion's made. Do I have a second? I second. Scafidi seconds. Roll call.
Johnston, no.
Grillo, no.
Kavich, aye.
Scafidi, aye.
Guzikowski, aye.
Seifert, no.
Chandler, no.
Item fails 3-4. I would suggest tenant/applicant meet with staff and figure it out.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, moving on to item 5B. It's a review of building plans for modifications to the exterior building facade for the Bel-Air Cantina tenant space at 7979 South Main Street. The tenant address again is 410 West Town Square Way. Tax key number is 813-9053. Pete.
All right, thank you. The north elevation, as we spoke of earlier, that it contained all of the opaque glazing showing a nice warm place to be, is covering the back of house operations at the Bel-Air Cantina at 410 West Town Square Way. And as a similar approach as we had with GG Cupcakes, the applicant is requesting a modification to the amount of clear glazing that can be covered with opaque to help hide those parts of the business. In your packet, they do show what is on the other side, and that may not be the best look for the street. Now, in the DTS regulating plan, it talks about the amount of clear glazing to toward the street. There is no minimum, opaque clear glazing when it comes to like service stores. So this is a non-entry facade. This part of the building faces a parking lot. And so it is up to the Plan Commission to modify the amount of opaque glazing on this elevation. And so staff recommends that the Plan Commission approve the proposed building modification, changing the clear glazing to opaque glazing for the windows as illustrated in Exhibit A. And so what we see here is what is going to be allowed. If they want to increase it, they're going to have to come before the Plan Commission to ask for additional approvals to do any modifications to this. Mr. Mayor.
All right, so this currently faces what exactly? Parking lot or?
Yeah.
Is that the alley area?
No.
Okay. What is that a picture of exactly?
That's actually the back. So back of the house, everything behind that glazing right there is all of our dry storage. So
What is the image that you've had?
it's Santa Monica Boulevard,
Okay.
leading
Beach,
to
beachfront?
Yeah.
All right. Questions from the commission? Mr. Chandler?
So for opaque glazing, since this is not considered a sign, is it acceptable to have a picture on there?
In this particular case, it is existing to be, compromising with the applicant. We see that we could leave it as existing, that they could have opaque film as already existing and not have to tell them to remove it and put a white one on. In this particular case, in the future, when an applicant's going to move in, we're going to tell them ahead of time, you're going to need to come in and tell us what you're going to do prior to putting it up. So we're trying to be friendly with the tenants in this particular case. So that's why the way, we have it phrased in the staff recommendation as as shown in Exhibit A. So this is what it is. If they change it, then they're going to have to come back before the Plan Commission for review. So we're putting it in stone for the most part.
Thank you.
I would argue this is preferable than whatever blank thing you would have on there, especially considering where it faces. Other comments or questions? Commissioner Siebert?
Yeah, I have a question about putting pictures for opaque. Is this going to be a standard then for the entire Drexeltown Square? I'm afraid that we start with one end and it could continue, and I'm not totally in favor of this.
Well, in this particular case, it's similar to the Gigi's. This side of the building is facing the parking lot, not Main Street. If this was on Main Street, staff would most likely be recommending not approving it because that is your main thoroughfare. Where this is located is not in an area that is going to be facing the main drag, so to speak. It's going to be the walking behind the building. Probably the residents in the apartment would probably see it more than anybody who's driving through Drexeltown Square.
I understand where you're going, Commissioner Siebert, but I do think because it is the back of house and they're just trying to keep things clean looking, that's where I'm in favor of it.
And I agree with glazing to cover it up. It's just that the type of glaze, is it a picture, and what do you really have for a picture? I think, if it was some other type setup, then a full picture, then maybe I could buy into it.
Okay, other questions or comments? Alderman Bekavich.
Just a comment, we've run across this before, and I guess the whole intent of this opaque, whether it's white or it's a picture of the sunset here, is to block the work area. It's just the back of house area where they got storage. So that's the intent and purpose of it. I don't have a problem with this. I personally find this much more attractive than just a blank white wall. So whether it's a picture of a sunset or, it's like a screensaver on a computer. It's really just serving it's supposed to make you feel pleasant and at ease. So I like it much better than a white wall. So I'm in favor of this.
Okay. Other questions or comments? Just a general comment, and this is somewhat related to this item, but yes, standards are important for everything that we do at Drexeltown Square, but we can't live in fear of a tenant or an applicant trying to do something different, especially in a case where the different choice is better, in my mind, aesthetically better. If I had a choice between this image that's on the screen and a blank canvas or a covering, I would take this in a heartbeat. So same thing with the neon sign that was rejected. I would look at that the same way. Yes, the standards say no neon signs, but if there's an element or an argument to be made that it can improve or the aesthetics or the creativity of signage for an applicant or a tenant, we should consider it. That's the point of having a plan commission. It's just general comment. Other questions or comments on this item? Motion.
David will make a motion that the plan commission approve the proposed building modification, changing the clear glazing to opaque glazing for the windows illustrated in Exhibit A, at the building at 410 West Town Square Way.
Guzekowski will second.
Roll call.
Johnston, aye.
Grillo, aye.
David, aye.
3D aye.
Guzekowski, aye.
Seibert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
All right, good luck. Item C is a conditions and restrictions review for a conditional use permit request submitted by Chris McGuire, Quick Trip, Inc. for a conditional use permit for outdoor display and storage of retail merchandise on the property at 2040 West Ryan Road. Tax key number is 878-9003, -004. Carrie.
Mr. Mayor, before we get to that item, because item 5A was a denial, we need to actually have the rationale for the no votes, and that's also to help us inform the tenant for how to possibly change their application to bring it back before the plan commission.
All right, so I'll start with Commissioner Johnston and work this way for the no votes.
Mine was for the neon signs. Yep.
If we were to put those on the interior of the building, facing the outside, but stepped back by a couple feet, would that still be considered signage?
That would be an interior decoration and not attached to the glazing, so they would be able to do something like that, yes.
Thanks for the clarification.
Mhm.
Anything more, Brian?
Oh, that was it.
Commissioner Carrillo?
I feel the same way.
Okay.
That it, okay, that's enough.
Is it just the
It
neon?
was
that
just
you're-
the neon
Just
signs.
the neon,
Yep.
okay.
Commissioner Siebert?
I'm in agreement with the neon sign.
Just the neon sign?
Yes.
Okay.
And Commissioner Chandler?
The neon signs, as well as the quantity of signs.
Feel that the quantity is too much?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Can I ask a quick question regarding the quantity? Is that just for the southwest elevation or for the northwest elevation as well?
I paused it. Who are you asking that question to?
So
Chauncey, Chandler,
Commissioner
that
Chandler?
would be the southwest.
just for the southwest? So 5 is not
5 on a space that only allows
2.
2. Okay.
Yes.
Okay,
Okay, I think staff has enough to help the tenant with another application.
okay, yeah, work together on that.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right, I think I read the agenda item C, so I'll hand it off to Carrie on that.
Yes, thank you. At the January 10th meeting, the Plan Commission recommended that the council approve of a conditional use permit for the Quick Trip gas station at this location to have outdoor storage as a merchandise display for ice and propane. And that would be on the south elevation of the existing convenience store. So if anybody has any question about where that's going to be located, it's on the last page of the conditions and restrictions. It's circled in red for you to get an idea of where that is. I apologize that this is the wrong orientation, but basically this on the right side of the page is Ryan Road. So there is vegetation that will be placed on the south side of the paved area where the propane and ice is going to be located, so that will provide some screening. There's also vegetation that will be along Ryan Road, so hopefully this will be screened quite a bit. As a reminder, to be consistent with other approvals in the city for similar uses, display of propane and ice, staff is recommending that outdoor storage and display of retail merchandise be expressly limited to these two items, and the propane within a locked cage, ice within a storage container, in the location as identified on the submitted plan. So no other outdoor storage or display of merchandise would be allowed, doesn't matter what it would be or where it would be located. This is the only place that would be allowed to have ice in a container and propane in a locked cage. If there are any questions, otherwise I can go forward with a few items in the conditions and restrictions. Okay, so the conditional use is for outdoor storage and display of ice and propane retail merchandise. If you go to page, I guess they're all labeled page 6 of 6, I'll change that. Item 3A, parking. Parking requirements for the project shall be provided in accordance with the existing plan unit development and by the plans approved by the Plan Commission on November 22nd. This is more of a clarification item, just so that everybody is aware that we are not changing what was approved. We're not changing anything in the PUD. This is just recognizing what has been approved. Same thing for item 3G. Item 5A, landscaping, again, recognizing the approvals that are existing. Anywhere in the conditions and restrictions where it says that the Plan Commission can modify the standards would be for subsequent plan reviews. So for instance, if they wanted to change something else on the site having to do with, let's say, the exterior building, you would have the opportunity to provide those modifications without going forward with a conditional use amendment. That's also in the code, so it's just restating what's in the code. 7, for building and parking setbacks, there's a note here that states that this is in a plan unit development and it is a corner lot, so these setbacks are reflecting what is approved for the PUD. Signs, also recognizing that this is an existing PUD, so it would have to be compliant at some time. And then 10, permitted uses. Item B specifies outdoor storage and display of retail merchandise limited to 1 ice receptacle and 1 propane cage along the south side of the building. No other outdoor storage or outdoor display of any retail merchandise is allowed. One addition would be to reference the exhibits that are attached to the conditional use, to the conditions and restrictions. Staff's recommendation is that the Plan Commission recommends that the Common Council adopt the conditions and restrictions as part of the conditional use permit, allowing outdoor storage and display of ice and propane retail merchandise on the property at 2040 West Ryan Road after a public hearing. Mr. Mayor.
A question for you, Carrie or Pete. Is this consistent with the outdoor storage at the other 2 Quick Trip locations in the city?
The location at 10th and Drexel, their conditional use permit specifies this. Other locations, their conditional use permit may not, it may be silent on outdoor display. Technically, per code, that would need a conditional use. So if one does not exist, there should be.
So it is consistent with 10th and Drexel?
It's consistent with the most recent
Right.
gas stations, including 10th and Drexel.
Okay, and did this Plan Commission, however it was assembled when we reviewed that 10th and Drexel, did they also rule on this
Yes.
subject?
Yes.
And I'm guessing affirmatively.
This is exactly
Okay.
as it would be
All right.
worded.
Open up to the commission for questions or comments.
Good.
Alderman
Again,
Bekavich?
I think it looks good. I actually think the location is great. It's not the front of the building. I realize it's facing Ryan Road, but as they're redoing this building, I think it's appropriately set where it should be. So I'm good with it.
Motion on 5C.
Guzekowski makes a motion that the Plan Commission recommends that the Common Council adopts the conditions and restrictions as part of the conditional use permit allowing outdoor storage and display of ice and propane retail merchandise on property of 2040 West Ryan Road.
Seifert seconds.
Roll call.
Johnston, aye.
Grillo, aye.
David Chai.
Speedy, aye.
Guzekowski, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
Good luck. Have a good night. Last item of the evening. Item 5D is a conditional use permit amendment request submitted by Jim Meyer, Badger Bus Lines, for an amendment to the existing conditional use permit affecting the property at 6819 South Hall Avenue, tax key number 734-9997-000. Pete.
All right, thank you. As the mayor stated, the applicant is requesting an amendment to the existing conditional use permit, which would allow for storage of 12,000 gallons of fuel to be stored on site. If you recall, back in 2016, the conditional use permit was approved to operate a private bus service at this location. They operate approximately 25 buses out of this property, and they do require refueling. Currently, there's no ability to refuel on site, and this is something they would like to do. This would be a permitted accessory use for this type of operation. However, an amendment to the conditional use permit is required to allow for any inflammable gas or liquid over 5,000 gallons. In
Just
your
restate
packet,
that again. Accepted, but actions required by the Plan Commission.
correct. Anytime there is storage over 5,000 gallons, conditional use is required, even if it is a permitted accessory use. If it was less than 5,000, they wouldn't need to have any action by this commission and as well as the Common Council. In your packet is included illustrations of the site plan of where it's going to be located. It is located, if you're familiar with the property when we talked last time, there is a residential house where Ms. Sharon Dahl resides. In the front toward Howell Avenue, there's a residential garage, and the location of the tank would be to the west of that. It'll be screened from the public right-of-way by the garage as well as the privacy fence that currently exists at that location. Of course, any fire codes will need to be met in order for this to be installed. They do have a contractor, including your packet, was operations of how they would install it. Here is an example of the right-way bus company tank that they have on site, and it would be very similar in looks and construction. If the Plan Commission is comfortable with this amendment, Section 8 on page 4 of the conditions and restrictions, which is included in your packet, would be allowing under the permitted use inflammable gas and liquids in excess of 5,000 gallons, which is accessory to a permitted use or an approved conditional use. Having said that, staff recommends that the Plan Commission recommends that the Common Council approve a conditional use permit amendment allowing the storage of inflammable gas in excess of 5,000 gallons at 6819 South Howell Avenue after a public hearing.
Thank you, Pete. Assistant Chief Kresick, any comments or concerns?
Good evening, Mike Kresick, Fire Department. Obviously you're talking about a large hazmat installation to a certain degree. In the past, we've often talked that the refueling of the vehicles and the filling of these tanks is generally where there are problems found as far as incidents that require our services. So having a little bit of a larger tank on site certainly reduces the amount of filling operations for that tank. So there's a little bit of comfort that they have a larger installation going in than a smaller one that might require more tankers on site. This will be regulated by the state of Wisconsin as far as tank and then any additional fire codes. We have no additional concerns outside the normal code regulations.
Thank you, Mike. I've got one audience question, but I'll open it up to the commission if there's any questions or comments. Commissioner Chandler?
I have a question for the applicant.
Yes, come on up. Name and address for the record.
I'm Doug Fosno. Work address 6819 South Howell Avenue, home address 7612 South 70th.
Thank you.
For the size of this tank, why did you decide on 12,000 gallons versus 5,000 or less?
If you go with the smaller tanks, when you get a refill, a tanker comes out at 7,500 gallons. So the reason for that, you get a better rate of fuel if you get larger, get a full load.
Thank you.
Okay. Alderman Bekavich?
Just one question. I'm sure you located this and you've conferred with the fire department, but is there adequate turnaround space for a tanker truck to come in there and be able to exit in and out safely?
Yeah, there's plenty of room for them. They can go around the back of the building and make a U-turn or just back up right where they would drop it there.
I would imagine if a tanker truck gets in there, there's no problem with our fire equipment.
Come on up, Chief Kresick, Assistant Chief.
Mike Kresick, Fire Department. There was a preliminary discussion regarding access and turnarounds regarded to this project, and they meet our needs.
Okay. Just while you're here, Mike, any hydrant needs, or does this affect hydrants at all, or is this just strictly a hazmat thing with curbing?
Strictly a hazmat issue. We do explore water supply solutions for this. Generally, in cases like this, we like the hydrants a little bit further away, pending a worst case scenario.
Anything else on the commission side? All right, Mr. Degner?
Arden Degner, 8540 South Pennsylvania Avenue. I am surprised that there's a carte blanche approval listed here for this installation. Every other installation in a filling station, I understand, state and international code requires removal after a certain period of time, the in-ground. Now, that leads to two questions. How many of these above ground will we have in this city?
Go ahead and ask your second question.
The other question is, I've endured years of empty tanks, and all it has to do is that garage be replaced or caught fire or something, and we'll have an empty tank just like we had on the corner of the railroad track and Rawson Avenue for years. In fact, I believe those are empty for a period of at least 15 years with various types of people. And I object to having these visible in our city. Why? My next question is, why isn't this underground? Is it because he wants to not conform to the state codes because they're more restrictive, like the FedEx? FedEx put them underneath the ground.
Thank you for your comments. Somewhat tangentially related to what we talked about, but it's not. The empty tanks thing is not related to this discussion, because this is about this applicant and this use. And as far as I know, that's an appropriate use, as indicated in the report. I don't believe that those tanks are stored underground typically. Anyone know? Mike, do you know? You don't know, or you're saying no, they're not typically stored? All right. You have additional comment? No? Okay. And as far as the approval, that's what we're here to do, is to talk about if it's appropriate, and we think it's a safe and correct use of the tank and on the property. In my thought process, I think it is. And I think Mike has signed off from his comments on what the fire department thinks about it, and as far as the safety, and I'm sure that none of us up here would supersede his authority on that issue. That's why we have those kind of experts. So I appreciate your comments. Any other discussion from the commission?
I guess I would just argue this, underground tanks versus above ground tanks. Above ground tanks are more easily inspected, are more easily maintained. We have a number of them. I don't know the exact number, but I mean, we have some propane above grounds. I think, if I'm not mistaken, at the street department, we have an above ground tank. So, I mean, they've been throughout the city. I myself have maintained tanks like this. They're numerous around the airport. They're common with larger vehicles, that they go above ground versus underground. So again, if properly maintained and taken care of, I think we're fine. As far as it being within sight, this one is screened by the garage, which I think is very appropriate. So works out pretty well for this particular property.
Okay. Anything on this side?
Looks good.
All right. Motion on 5D.
Kavich will make a motion that the Plan Commission recommend to the Common Council that they approve a conditional use permit amending amendment allowing the storage of inflammable gas in excess of 5,000 gallons at the property at 6819 South Howell Avenue after a public hearing.
Seifert seconds.
Roll call.
Johnson, aye.
Grillo, aye.
Kavich, aye.
Scuti, aye.
Guzikowski, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
Good luck, sir. Motion to adjourn.
Carrillo moves to adjourn at 6:58.
Guzekowski will second.
Roll call.
Johnson, aye.
Carrillo, aye.
Kavich, aye.
VDS.
Guzekowski.
Seabird, aye.
Chandler, aye.
Thank you for watching on the live stream. Thank you to our audience for their questions. We will see you in 2 weeks at the, we have a fifth Tuesday, don't we? Yes, always popular with the elected.
We got a meeting next week?
No, don't we don't? Yeah, we don't have a meeting next week. No, we're off. We're off. All right, thanks for watching.
Steve,